Awaiting his fate, lawyers wrap up presentations in cartel's appeal. Court reserves decision but says case will be given priority. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on air and online at onespotmedia.com. I'm Archibald Gordon.
And I'm Doreen Samuels. Also this evening, dry spell again. TVJ News asks what is happening to the solutions proposed in prior years.
Reprieve. Windalco granted waiver critical to its continued operation.
Playing politics. Government slams opposition on its stance against the level of increase in the minimum wage.
Out of space. Police say effort to stamp out illicit trade hampered by lack of storage.
And in business news, slipping again. The dollar continues to come under pressure.
There's also sports commentary and weather in the primetime package. But before the break, the feedback question.
This evening we're asking, what was your experience with seaweed on a beach you visited recently?
Share comments online, facebook.com/Television Jamaica and tweet at Television Jam.
Please stay with us. Primetime News returns after this break.
Welcome back to Primetime News.
Special welcome to folks on onespotmedia.com.
Up first this evening, the fate of entertainer Vybz Kartel and his co-accused is now in the hands of the three-member panel of judges of the Court of Appeal.
The President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Dennis Morrison, says though he cannot give a specific date, some priority will be given to the ruling.
The 7-day appeal hearing concluded today after lawyers for the appellants responded to the arguments made by the prosecution.
A controversial text message that prosecutors say was sent from Kartel's phone dominated the final day of the hearing. TVJ's Vashon Brown was in court today.
There has been one big question throughout the appeal hearing. When was this message created? We chop up the boy lizard fine. Lawyers for the appellants last week said it was created on July 6, 2011. Prosecutors on Friday said it was August 19, 2011. And today, the court heard that it could have even been August 23, 2011, based on the evidence that was presented in the 2014 trial, and more dates.
Including September 30th, which said that there was a modification date and a creation date and an opportunity for the information, the messages to be manipulated.
With so many different dates of the possible creation of what the lawyers called this most material evidence, they argued that this text should not have been put to the jury. Prosecutors last week sought to make a distinction between a file and messages within a file. They told the court that July 6, 2011 was actually the date the data file with the controversial message was created, 6 weeks before Lizard's murder. The actual message, which was in the data file, they argued, was created 3 days after Lizard was killed. But today, the lawyers for the appellants told the court that a detailed analysis of the transcript of the 2014 trial did not note any difference between file and message. The cell phone itself was again under scrutiny today.
What we are saying is that the learned trial judge had a question of law to answer for himself. And that was whether or not the evidence had raised a reasonable doubt as to the integrity of the exhibit.
The trial judge in his summation said it has been admitted that the integrity of the phone was compromised.
That is what was relied on in my submissions to say that that was a finding by the learned trial judge that the integrity of the exhibit itself had been compromised. And based on that, the exhibit ought not to have been given to the jury.
Another attorney for Sean Campbell
They deliberately overlooked many of the text messages and calls. And the law is that the defense should have seen all the calls made on the phones. They just handpicked a few. That's suspicion as to what was not chosen, because the police officer said it was the investigating officer who told him what to look at. That's not how the law is.
In the meantime, President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Dennis Morrison, said that the panel has decided to reserve its decision. He said he could not give a specific date for a ruling. Justice Morrison said there are over 6,000 pages of transcripts and a large number of submissions. Kartel, Kahira Jones, Sean Campbell and Andre St. John were convicted for the 2011 murder of Clive Lizard Williams. They are seeking to have their murder conviction quashed. Vashon Brown, TVJ News.
With no significant rainfall projected for the coming months, water restrictions have been announced for some areas. But as this dry condition is nothing new, neither are the measures being implemented, which raises the question, what of all the drought mitigation measures suggested over the years? TVJ's Herman Green sought an update from the National Water Commission.
Jamaica has experienced severe dry conditions almost yearly.
2014, 15 and 16 are the most recent. In those years, water levels in the Mona Reservoir and the Hermitage Dam fell below 50% of their capacity. In those years, water levels at the Mona and Hermitage dams fell below 50% of their capacity. Now in 2018, the dry months have again caused questions to be raised about the solutions that have been discussed when things were at their worst. So what of those suggestions? Public Relations Manager at the NWC, Charles Buchanan, insists things would be worse this year if they were not implemented. He notes the difference in water levels between the Mona Dam and the Hermitage Dam. Hermitage is at 40% of its capacity.
The Mona Reservoir would also be down, if not at the same place, but it would be down as well. But because of the expediting of the Kingston and St. Andrew non-revenue water reduction program about which I spoke earlier, we're now having the Mona Reservoir having 90% of its storage, because we have already completed some of the major interventions on the Mona system.
It was estimated that leakages and illegal connections consumed close to 60% of the NWC's supply. Other suggested measures include accessing underground wells in the Ligani area of St. Andrew and reactivating old wells.
That actually was a long-term program, and what was expressed in that was for us to find ways of sewering more of the corporate area, and after you have sewered more of the corporate area and the Ligani Plains generally, you would then begin to clean up the underground aquifer in the corporate area. That program is a 20-30 year long-term strategy.
He said sewage pipe works around the corporate area are continuing as part of that program. Public-private partnerships are also being sought to access more wells. Water distribution was another challenge highlighted, as abundant water sources in the northern parishes are not available to the majority of the population in the south.
There's a great interconnectedness for a long area from, let's say, Negril via the Logwood Water Treatment Plant, come to the Great River Treatment Plant at the St. James Hanover border, continuing over to the Martha Bray system over in Trelawney, and the water can be supplied as far away as Runaway Bay. But there are elements of that interconnectedness that need to be completed in terms of the ring roading around the country.
That, he says, is also a long-term project which won't be completed before 2030. Herman Green, TVJ News.
Frustrated residents living in one St. Anne community are upset with their political representatives about a lack of water and poor road conditions. On Monday, the residents blocked sections of the Higgintown Main Road, demanding that their issues be addressed. However, the Member of Parliament, Lisa Hanna, says a project to use a well to supply water to the residents in the area has been put on hold, and that has contributed to the problem. TVJ's Shamela Mitchell-Pullin reports the problem. TVJ's Shamela Mitchell-Pullin
is a problem with the parish council because they have no trucks. I brought the NWC here and the Ministry of Water on several occasions to look at the well. The capped well right down here, sir.
But Communications Manager at the National Water Commission, NWC, Charles Buchanan, said a long-term project was identified to supply water to the residents of Higgintown. He did not reveal the cost of that project, but said it is prohibitive at this time. Meanwhile, Mr. Buchanan says the NWC has been trucking water to Higgintown once per week, which falls under the municipal corporation. Shamela Mitchell-Pullin, TVJ News.
Our top story this evening, lawyers wrap up arguments in cartel appeal. The entertainer now awaits his fate as justices start review. And still ahead, Security Minister slams opposition for indicating it may withdraw support for state of emergency. And in business news, weakening, the dollar continues to slide. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Primetime News. The government today blasted the opposition for what it deems the politicization of the minimum wage issue. Addressing Parliament today, Labour Minister Shahini Robinson was responding to criticisms about the rate of increase from her opposition counterpart Horace Daly. TVJ's Janela Pursues reports.
Parliament should have been on recess, but on Tuesday...
Today, Mr. Speaker, I hereby ask this Honourable House to affirm the following increases as approved by Cabinet.
MPs were called back in to debate and approve the order, which gives the clearance for an increase in the minimum wage. Come August 1, the minimum wage will move from $6,200 to $7,000. Opposition spokesman on Labour and Social Security, Horace Daly, argued that at $800 more, the increase is inadequate. He pointed to pronouncements made by the JLP when the Portia Simpson-Miller-led government raised the minimum wage in 2016 from $5,600 to $6,200.
These words, Mr. Speaker, as I said, the best I've ever seen anywhere in Jamaica. Honorable Audley Shaw Manayal, pass it to him for me. These are his words. 5,000 US per annum it must move to.
He further argued that the government can do more.
The economy can sustain a higher minimum wage at this time. And I'm not saying you must move it to 10,000 immediately. But it can sustain more than the 7,000 that has been offered. If it is God's will and we are returned to government, we are going to raise the minimum wage every January 1 until the ordinary worker reaches a certain level.
It was on this point that he urged the government to raise the minimum wage next year, pegging it above inflation. The minister's response:
I wish that he would, when he speaks on behalf of the people of Jamaica, that he would separate the politics from what is at hand. It is not a political debate. It is a debate that affects all the people of this country.
She also slammed the opposition about its criticism relating to the level of increase.
The head of the Household Helpers Association came out publicly and said that they were pleased with the increase. Mr. Speaker, he is being disingenuous.
Janela Precious, TVJ News.
Windalco has received reprieve from U.S. authorities who told Jamaica the company is exempt from sanctions facing its Russian-based parent company, UC Rosal. The announcement was made in Parliament earlier today. TVJ's Dashan Hendricks reports.
Windalco has been buckling as sanctions on Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska affect his companies, including UC Rusal and by extension Rusal's local subsidiary Windalco. Those sanctions affecting even the ability of Windalco to pay workers pushed the government into action. In June, an appeal was made to U.S. authorities for waivers. On Tuesday, good news. Mining Minister Robert Montague told the House he got a letter dated July 18 from the U.S. Treasury. In summary, it says
that Windalco's commercial activities are covered under General License 14.
That license allows for U.S. and non-U.S. persons to do transactions with Windalco and face no punishment. The waiver expires on October 23.
We acknowledge that it is not the long-term solution, but a positive step in the right direction.
While those efforts continue, Mr. Montague said he is happy for the clarification which it is expected will make it easier for banks and suppliers to do business with Windalco.
I'm hoping that the efforts will continue in the same way to see if further extensions can be granted.
Windalco accounts for a quarter of Jamaica's bauxite alumina exports.
The clarification we have gotten from the U.S. Department of Treasury will also enhance business from Windalco, and they can then move to full production and to employ more workers.
Despite the sanctions which Windalco face, Mr. Montague said overall revenues earned by the sector are not affected.
We are running ahead of projection, budget projection on revenue. And at the end of the month, when the figures are collated and published, I am sure the House will be updated.
Dashan Hendricks, TVJ News.
In the meantime, the opposition spokesman on energy, Philip Paulwell, has repeated his call for the government to roll back part of the fuel tax. Mr. Paulwell said the $7 tax implemented in 2015 to pay for an oil hedge should be rolled back because it is no longer doing what it was intended for.
I am again urging the government that we will look at the cost structure of fuels and in particular of the hedge money that has been collected on the basis of providing an insurance for the consumers, which insurance is not in place. So the price of fuel goes, the price of oil goes to $80 a barrel tomorrow. The Jamaican consumers are not protected. They will have to pay. That will have to be passed through to them in higher prices. Give them back this money for the hedge.
If you visited any beach along the south coast, chances are you came in contact with brown, messy sargassum seaweed. The nuisance has been affecting Jamaica in recent years. TVJ's Kalisha Williams was in Helshire St. Catherine today and now reports on how the seaweed is affecting businesses there and possible solutions.
White sandy beaches turned murky. Glistening waters now a brown mess. It's the sargassum seaweed taking over the shore along the south coast, a situation which is rife throughout the Caribbean.
The existing environment now, where you have an increase in the amount of nutrients that's entering from your land-based pollution sources, as well as variations in the temperature where we're experiencing warmer climate, you will then have the ideal conditions under which the sargassum would grow.
But could it be getting worse? This is meters away from the Waves Beach in St. Catherine, a displeasing sight, made worse under windy conditions. So bad that just minutes after capturing this footage, the foul smell sent us packing.
Happy here now why we have that terrible scent there. The wave bring it up so it gets stagnant. So because it's stagnant and now wash away, I succumb to get the bad scent. Sometimes I really feel bad for sure.
Continuing the journey to the Helshire Beach, it's a similar scourge. These bathers braved the seaweed, cooling off from the summer heat. Others opted out.
It does affect me, and it's other people as well too, because you cannot get to swim properly. You know, you cannot get, especially when you're coming out of the water near to the beach line. Then the whole mass, you can hardly walk to come out of it.
So if it continues like this, you're never gonna go in the water?
Well, it's not a surety.
We were told visitors are even turning away.
The influx of seaweed is especially a nuisance for fishermen. They say if an amount as small as this get trapped in their nets, it could be damaged. And some of their nets cost as much as 300,000 Jamaican dollars.
Yeah, African net, yes. The rubbish, African net, yes.
This is my camp. And I hear so we look a live load, but we also will look money. So we have to be here every day.
On the flip side, some believe there is some good to the influx of sargassum.
If you never hear, all them, you see that city rate of them shop, all them places are gone. Because it helps break the wave, it helps break the policy.
Every time that this come in, them should come and get something to move it, give to the farmer them who farming. Because that's the best manure. Instead of we have to get manure from abroad, we're doing good.
So Goody claims that he's using it as medicine.
It's good for stomach, pain of stomach. Every day we have smoke chalice every day. And nicotine and so this thing for pain of stomach, all them people say are dead off with them stomach. Bad stomach, you just dry it and boil it.
We have not seen where the research has taken us to the point where it's safe for consumption.
In the meantime, the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, is promising help.
We have been advising persons that have been contacting us about the influx of sargassum on their respective beaches that there is the opportunity to assist with cleanups. So if they're able to organize a local community group and they have identified the beach, as long as we can show that the amount there has accumulated to a point beyond the control for manual cleanup.
Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
There are renewed calls from craft vendors for a meeting with the tourism minister to discuss issues affecting the craft industry. The vendors say they've been neglected for years and they're demanding answers. The issues were discussed at a meeting in Ocherius yesterday. TVJ's Anthony Logg reports.
Lots of craft but little buyers. Sentiment shared by craft vendors island-wide. Then, the poor condition of some craft markets. Vendors have been calling for a meeting with Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett to voice their concerns on the challenges they've been having. But They say that's yet to happen. So on Monday, they held a meeting in Ocho Rios to voice their concerns.
We hungry till we get all of. You imagine, for a week you go down there and make $10. Could I be satisfied for $10?
But that's not all. They've also taken issue with the ministry's proposed artisan village, which is expected to showcase authentic Jamaican food, music, heritage and craft.
We all here sit and we went to a meeting in Montego Bay. Waste my time. And when I look through, as not a bright scholar but an old scholar, I saw it's nonsense. How could you make up an artisan village when we are here 41 years, rotting down? It cannot work.
So that you're going to spend, so much millions of dollars in order to orchestrate a new market, right? We need to spend some attention of developing the existing that we have.
Also present at the meeting was opposition spokesman on tourism, Dr. Wickham McNeil.
One of the things that ministers must understand is you can't fly all over the world selling tourism. And you're making 10 trips to London and don't make 1 trip to the craft market.
The vendors issued this warning to the tourism minister.
We decided our mind and don't think that the community is not going to help us. They're going to help us if we don't get help before the year up.
For Dr. McNeil,
this is an important industry for the tourism sector. So I'm calling on the minister, he must come and have a meaningful meeting. A meaningful meeting with the craft industry.
Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
The National Security Minister has fired back at the opposition for their recent comments regarding the cost of the state of emergency now in effect in St. James. The opposition threatened to withdraw its support for the measure, suggesting that the money could have been spent on more effective programs. But Dr. Horace Chang says he's surprised by the opposition's position.
For opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips, the money spent on the St. James state of emergency could be better deployed to more lasting efforts to curtail crime. He says close to $250 million has been spent on the police alone so far for the security measure in the parish.
Are we getting the best value for the country's anti-crime effort?
But Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says he is surprised that the opposition leader has taken such a stance.
And my first response would be one, no government can place a value on any Jamaican life. It is immoral and unethical to try and put a money value on any citizen life.
He says he's also surprised by the threat, considering the successes so far from the state of emergency.
You could say we have saved over 113 lives in St. James this year already. That is not something you can place a money value on. And it's not only saving someone's life, but the entire community ecosystem changes. People are going about the business normally. People feel more confidence in security, and you begin to reestablish a kind of order that all Jamaicans want to live in.
He insists that these successes surpass the $30 million per month cost quoted by the opposition, indicating that even if it had cost more, the government would still uphold the measure. By his assessment, he thinks the opposition is the only entity against the measure. He believes residents of the parish are also fully in support and are looking forward to the next phases.
What we are looking at is that once we finish this phase in terms of state of emergency, we will have in place the infrastructure and the security forces, as well as the kind of other activities that we are doing in that area zones in terms of social intervention and activities to provide opportunities for young men to ensure the gains we have made will continue, and most importantly, the confidence that has been restored in the security force will remain, and therefore there will be dialogue between the community and the security force to ensure that we don't have the kind of wanton criminality that took place over the last 2 or 3 years.
Herman Green, TVJ News.
And before the feedback responses, we check in with TVJ's Herman Green at the Wilmers Boys School for a preview of the first TVJ News Town Hall meeting on plans for the new Parliament Oval. Herman?
Thank you very much, guys. Well, all is set for this evening's RJR Communications Group Town Hall discussion. Of course, we're here at the Wolmer's Boys School Auditorium at Heroes Circle, and the discussion will all be about the National Heroes Park redevelopment project. Now, of course, since this was mentioned some time ago, there's been a lot of comments and criticisms, commendations about it. Tonight, we'll hear discussions from all the stakeholders involved: civil society, business operators, government entities, and probably the most important of all, community members right here around Heroes Circle. Of course, we're scheduled to start at 8:30, right after primetime news. So if you're in the area and you want to come here and have your voice be heard, please feel free to do so. We start here at 8:30 with our host, Dion Jackson Miller. So right now, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Herman. And time now for the responses from our friends on Facebook and Twitter. And Archie is at the smartboard.
Thanks, Lorraine. We're talking about seaweed and beaches today. Here's a question. What was your experience with seaweed on a beach you visited recently? That's a big issue. I saw a story earlier in Primetime News. Here's the first comment. It turned me off from even going near the beaches, near the water. Beaches must be properly maintained, says that person. This person says, I visited Fort Clarence Beach with some family members in June, and oh my God, it was a mess. The amount of seaweed that was there created a rise that was even higher than the sand. I was not brave enough to venture out in it. This person says, one thing for sure, I won't leave looking like a fish with extra scales, and therefore I won't see no weed. And this person says it's natural. It will be cleaned up. This is just a natural way of the sea cleaning itself. It's still one of the best beaches in the world. Keep your comments coming on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/televisionjamaica, and your tweets to @televisionjam. Business news and news from overseas after the break.